In terms of investment objectives, I'd say the broad objective is to give investors the broadest exposure to the various opportunities in China. There are many themes. I'll narrow it down to a few, but I'd say the first one you would have to say consumption. You're going to see massive expansion in the consumption class, the natural development of the middle class. That expansion is itself going to be bigger than many countries. I think obviously you think about various goods, but also services. If you think about areas like travel, obviously we've seen in the short term a pretty significant recovery there with things reopening. But even more broadly in areas like financial services, I think there's going to be significant growth there as well. Secondly, in industrials, again, I'd break it down to a few themes there. I think you'd first cite consolidation. There are many industries that are hugely fragmented, but now we're seeing them consolidate, the emergence of the winners in those categories, and just the emergence of companies that can be sort of much bigger over 5, 10, 15 years. I guess somewhat also related to that is the increasing, I would say, domestication of supply chains. There are many industries that are very reliant on foreign technology, and you're seeing domestic champions come through, and they're taking share from those foreign players. And then lastly, we're on the cusp of a huge shift in terms of the energy mix that's already underway, and that's a shift towards renewables. And I think that will definitely create significant opportunities as well. And then lastly, just the development of the capital markets. We've talked about financial services for the individual. There's going to be significant opportunities there, but also on the corporate or B2B side, as markets develop, that's going to create, I think, pretty significant opportunities also. Yeah, the process that we employ is very bottom up, focused on individual opportunities, and really just leveraging the team that we have on the ground. So, meeting companies is very key. That's how I spend my days, mostly meeting with companies, and just really understanding the opportunity for the individual companies. I guess that's a good lead into the things that I'm generally looking for in companies. I break it down into, I guess, growth, returns, and management. So growth, really thinking over the long term, how big a company can be given how well they're positioned. Secondly, thinking about returns. Ideally, you're generating high incremental returns on capital that you're reinvesting into the growth opportunity. And that really requires, I think, a strong understanding of a company's competitive advantage and the moat they have around their business. And again, that's something we're always trying to get to in our ongoing meetings with management and their competition. And then finally, thinking about management. So you can have the opportunity, you can have a great business, but you need management to really, to have a strategy, but also to execute on that strategy. And that's something that we're constantly evaluating with companies also. In terms of, the differentiation, I think perhaps versus other funds out there, we do really try to give the widest possible exposure to the opportunities in China. So we look really across the full market cap range. We also look at private companies. There's a lot of great companies out there growing strongly that have not yet listed. So we really try to get exposure to private companies as well when the opportunity is there. We use the leverage of the trust pretty actively in China. You're dealing with a market that is pretty volatile. This is part of what makes it, a sort of a good stock picking market. It tends to be quite volatile, often driven by headlines, and that can create opportunity. And the ability to shift the leverage can really help us capitalize on those opportunities. And of course, we leverage all our research, so we have the ability to short companies also. ideas can really come from a number of sources. I think there are, you know, generally global themes, of particular growth areas, and just thinking broadly about how the world will change. So you have those in the back of your mind. I think there's other themes that are potentially more specific to China. We cited earlier the growth in consumption. I think anything in the consumption space, we're always going to be interested. But there are other parts of the economy as well that we know are going to, grow in proportion over time. I think areas like healthcare will be interesting. Areas like renewable energy. There's sort of broader themes that we're always going to be on the lookout for good ideas. I think also, we're looking for good value. We can look, where companies are trading versus their history versus the market, or just how cheap they look in absolute terms. So, that can be, I guess, another source of ideas. In terms of who they're actually coming from, I think really anyone in the whole, sort of investment team, whether it is an analyst. Obviously, the analysts are experts on their particular sector, so they're uniquely positioned to find interesting ideas. But the fund managers as well are looking across the whole market. So really, it's from a range of sources where we can find ideas and just start the process of analysis. And once there's a sort of basic understanding of the business, the next step is really to meet with management, meet with competition, and really start that process of thorough analysis. Yes. So in terms of the market cap question, as I've said, we're trying to leverage the closed-end nature of the trust, which means that we can really look across the whole market cap spectrum. And in many cases, with smaller companies, there's less information, which means more mispricing. And we really want to own mispriced stocks. And obviously, we've got a significant team on the ground meeting with companies. So that sort of gives us the real opportunity, I think, to find these ideas. Many times before they're discovered by the broader market. So, as a result of that, we've got over 50% of the portfolio in companies below $5 billion US dollars in market cap, which is, that's a significant, proportion relative to the index, which is more sort of large cap heavy. We do also definitely invest in unlisted companies. As I've said, we're sort of looking for the best opportunities across the whole market, and many of the best ideas are in companies that are still private. So we do invest in that area, and those companies currently represent about 15% of the portfolio. Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons, but really as a starting point, you're investing in a country that is really on a trajectory to outgrow the world, and within that, there's a lot of structural change. And we're really focused on the companies that will sort of outgrow that overall market. Focused on areas as I've said, like consumption, that have pretty strong midterm growth prospects. Secondly, we're buying into a market at a valuation that is clearly attractive versus many other markets, despite in most cases higher growth. You are investing in a market that is still, I think, relatively unloved, and that sort of comes through if you look at sort of allocation to this market, both versus indices, but also when you think about that weight versus sort of China's weight in global GDP. There's a lot of potential for flows to shift to this market over time. It's also a great stock picking market. It tends to be quite volatile. Often driven by headlines, but that really creates opportunity for the bottom up investor focused on individual companies. And I think we have the team that can find the best stocks. A very strong team, continues to grow, throwing the net wide to find the best ideas across the whole market, including private companies.